Okay, we are live.
Are we good?
Yep.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Hope that you are all healthy and staying safe. I am going to call our April meeting of the Manor Board of Education to order. Would you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Before we start with tonight's agenda, I just want to make a couple comments. We have a very brief agenda tonight, but what we are going to do is go through it like any other meeting. And we will have citizens' remarks at the beginning. The citizens' remarks will be limited to the items that are on the agenda. But during Mr. Johnston's presentation, he is going to be updating us and the community with respect to what's happening at Penn's Manor and also with the state. So if you have questions at that point or throughout the meeting, you can type your messages and we will try to address those concerns before we adjourn this evening. Okay, Mr. Johnson, any presentations this evening?
There are none.
Did we do roll call? I'm sorry, I didn't do roll call yet. Okay.
Yeah, roll call. Okay. Mr. Belchick?
Here.
Dr. Boston?
Here.
Mrs. Eckenrode?
Here.
Mr. Hardesty?
Here.
Mr. Larch?
Here.
Mr. Polenick?
Here.
Mrs. Williams?
Here.
Mrs. Tate?
Here.
Mr. Packer?
Here.
Myself, Mr. Johnston?
Here.
Mrs. Dolges?
Here.
Mrs. Eglin?
Here.
Mr. Grimaldi?
Here.
Mr. Dalton?
Here.
Mr. Gramling?
Here.
Mr. Stafford?
Here. Okay, thank you. Mr. Johnson, no presentations this evening? There are none. Okay. Are there any additions or corrections to tonight's agenda? There are none. Okay, can we have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make the
I'll
motion.
make the motion.
Second.
Okay, I have Mrs. Eckenrode with the motion and Dr. Boston with the second.
Any questions? Any questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Okay, the agenda is approved. At this time, we will hear citizens' remarks.
Mr. Packer, at the moment, there are no citizens' remarks.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moscatello. We'll move on with the agenda. Suspension of policies, 6A. Can we have a motion to temporarily suspend all language in board policy 006.1, requiring or otherwise indicating that a majority of board members must be physically present at a board meeting when participation of any board members occurs via electronic means, and further suspending the requirement for 3 days advance notice of electronic participation due to the extraordinary circumstances and recommended precautions arising as a result of COVID-19 pandemic, with said action to be made effective immediately and to remain in effect until further action by the board. Can we have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Mr. Belchick and a second by Mr. Hardesty.
Are there any questions? Roll call.
Mr. Belchick,
Yes.
Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty,
Yes.
Mr. Larch,
Yes.
Mr. Packer,
Yes.
Mr. Polenick,
Yes.
Mrs. Tate,
Yes.
Mrs. Williams.
Yes.
Motion carries, Mr. Becker.
Thank you. 6B, can we have a motion to temporarily suspend during the period of time that the district school buildings are closed under the direction of either the federal, state, and/or local governments or any agencies thereof, any of the provisions of any policies of the Pennsylvania Area School District that are inconsistent with or that conflict with any actions taken by or programs instituted by the district as a result of the closure, and any directives of the federal, state, and or local governments or any agencies thereof, including but not limited to Act 13 of 2020 enacted into law by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania on March 27, 2020. My motion?
I'll make the
I'll make the
motion.
motion.
I have a motion by Mrs. Eckenrode and Mr. Larch. Would you like to second?
Yes, second.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions?
May I just make a comment? The reason we have this motion in place, I just want to make board members aware. The reason we have it in place is that you all know that we have policy and also procedures related to attendance, related to graduation requirements, etc. And I just want to make sure that we all understand in this time that we're in, the situation that we're in, that we need to suspend some of these policies and giving us the authorization to do that to get through the school building closure.
Okay, any other questions and or discussion? Okay, roll call.
Mr. Belchick,
Yes.
Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty,
Yes.
Mr. Larch,
Yes.
Mr. Packer, Mr. Polenick,
Yes.
Mrs. Tate,
Yes.
Mrs. Williams.
Yes.
Motion carries, Mr. Packer.
Okay, thank you. Number 7, the minutes of the meeting. They were all included in your packet on a PDF file. Can we have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Mr. Belchick and a second by Mr. Hardesty.
Are there any questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion carries. The business report is included also in your packet and included in a PDF file. Can we have a motion to approve the financial report?
I'll make the motion. Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Belchick and a second by Mr. Polenick.
Are there any questions? Roll call.
Mr. Belchick,
Yes.
Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty,
Yes.
Mr. Larch,
Yes.
Mr. Packer,
Yes.
Mr. Polenick,
Yes.
Mrs. Tate,
Yes.
Mrs. Williams.
Yes.
Motion carries, Mr. Packer.
Okay, presentation of bills. Can we have a motion to authorize payment of the bills as presented?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
I have a motion by Mrs. Eckenrode and a second by Mr. Belchick.
Are there any questions? Roll call.
Mr. Belchick,
Yes.
Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty,
Yes.
Mr. Larch,
Yes.
Mr. Packer,
Yes.
Mr. Polenick,
Yes.
Mrs. Tate,
Yes.
Mrs. Williams.
Yes.
Motion carries, Mr. Packer.
All right. Are there any program updates this evening, Mr. Johnston? There are none. Okay, that brings us to our superintendent report, Mr. Johnston.
Okay.
Welcome everyone this evening to the new world, so to speak. And I just want to start out saying thank you to Mr. Safran and the entire board for the learning experience that we've gone through in the past 3 weeks. I know we've had a lot more communication, a lot of distance communication. So I first have to say thank you to all of you as board members. Appreciate your support and patience with us as we as administration, which I have to thank next. A lot of stress and tension over the past few weeks with administration having to make decisions at quick, instant times. Also receiving information, trying to digest that information so that we can actually communicate back here at our level as a school district. So I have to thank all of you as board and administration for your patience. Also have to thank parents and students. I know this has been a tremendous amount of stress as we all try to stay safe. And that's the key that I want to stress, that we're doing all of this simply to keep us safe. I know parents have been stressed. I know we have individuals in our community that are unemployed. I know that we have students in homes every day. And I do know that it has been quite a task to make sure that we keep up with an educational process. So with that said, and thanking you all for your support and patience, I do want to go back a little bit in time and come forward to explain what we have done as a district. So on March 13th, we all can remember, that's a day we'll never forget, when we were told by the governor that schools would be closed for 2 weeks. At first, our plan was that would only be 2 weeks. However, we all learned that was extended. And as of today, we've all learned that our school buildings will be closed for the remainder of the school year. I want to emphasize to everyone in the community that we set the record straight. It's that our school buildings are closed for the remainder of the year, that we are not closing education. So in that time frame from March 13th to the present, each school district had to make a decision because PDE had asked all districts to please continue with education, come up with a continuity of education plan. Under that plan were 2 options for a district to select. First was the instructional plan. Instructional plan option included that district would ensure that education was happening with every student at their home, just as if we were under the roof of the school. So that was option number 1, meaning that everything would be graded, everything would be required, attendance would be required. The second option was for the school district to select enrichment and review as an option, which is the option we selected. Why did we as a district select that option? Well, there's a couple reasons. One, as administration, we clearly know the strain and stress that are in homes right now. And what I mean by that is not only the working environment you have within your home, but we also know that we're in a rural school district where we know internet access is not in every single home. So for us to choose the instructional plan option would be honestly a strain on the entire district and the entire community because we just would not be able to. So for example, in chemistry, we would, if a chemistry test was given on such and such date, every student would be required to complete that test. Attendance would be taken, test would be completed, all the grades would be submitted and counted in towards calculating a GPA. That's the instructional side. We clearly know that would be the ideal situation. The ideal situation, honestly, would be that we're here and under the roof. But the second ideal situation would be that if we could connect with every single student electronically and all that educational process could happen. However, we know in this time in our rural setting that can't happen. So we did select the enrichment and review option. Parents and students that are out there, if you're listening and brand new, you do know that we're operating under Google Classroom online if you can connect. You should also know that if you're in a situation that you're needing a device We are providing a Chromebook one in each household. So if you do need a Chromebook for you to connect and you have internet access, we ask that you do use that option. Again, we're trying to place one in every home at this point if you need it. If you already have the devices and are able to connect, that's great. But if you do need a device, please contact your high school or your principal of your building. Also, if you do not have internet access, you can please contact, again, your building principal so that we can provide pencil and paper copies of materials that can be sent out to you. At this point in time, we're going to begin mailing those. Our first distribution was out to the locations where we had meals, but in the future, we are going to be actually mailing those to the homes. So please put your request into your principal. So through that whole process, again, the ideal situation would be going to instructional plan, but we know that is a strain and can't happen or hasn't been able to happen with 100% of our students. So the question that probably many have in the community is, well, how are we moving through this year? It was just announced today that school buildings were closed. At this point today, report cards for the third marking period were delivered out to your student portal, so you can access that. If you need credentials to access, if you have internet access and you need credentials to get into your portal, we ask that you call the school district and leave a message on extension 2013 for those credentials in order for you to see your report card for the third marking period within your Sapphire portal. If you need a hard copy printed of your report card, I would ask that at the high school level, if you need a printed report card, when you're calling the school district number, if you hit extension 2700 and leave a message of the report card that needs to be printed and distributed, it'll be handled at that extension. If you are an elementary parent or student, need a hard copy printed of the report card, you can call the school district number and dial extension 1000. That is for elementary. So those report cards, again, were released for the third marking period, which leaves us with the fourth quarter that, as we have indicated, will be operating under enrichment and review. I also have to mention under enrichment and review that grading into the grade book will not take place. Teachers will give you feedback as students and parents through communication of email, through voicemails left at the school. All that information is on the website, the phone number and extension for every single teacher and administrator, along with their email. So we ask that you use that information to communicate back and forth. Again, the other option is also then to communicate through Google Classroom, that the students who are able to connect through Google Classroom can certainly communicate with their teacher through it. A couple other items that I want to talk about. I, again, have to emphasize the announcement of Governor Wolf today and saying that the school would be closed for the remainder of the year. I can almost be certain, as soon as everyone heard that at the beginning, probably students went running out of the room with excitement. But if you would listen to the entire announcement, it's that the school buildings will be closed, and each district is being asked by PDE to continue with a continuity of education plan. And again, our option that we will continue with is enrichment and review. I understand, and you all know that grades are not being recorded into the grade book. I would just ask you, this is a trying time, folks. And I, as the superintendent, have to, with confidence, say to PDE that this community is working in good faith towards providing the best education that they can in this time of crisis. So I ask that every single parent and student out there take the high road and not the low road. And what I mean by that is, I understand that this material is not being graded into the fourth grading period, but this is an educational institution, and as a community and adults, we need to set the example for us to continue to learn, not take this as a situation where we sit back and teach our students that do not keep up with work. We do want to train our young people to be active community members, when they become adults. We as adults need to make sure that we emphasize that and continue to support students, to communicate with our teachers. And again, thanks to our teachers and our entire staff. I also need to point out that all of our teachers and all of our office staff are working from home. So we need to make sure that you understand that. Please, they will all communicate with you by email. They will all communicate with you by leaving a voicemail, and they will call you back. So again, I want to repeat that all of our teachers are working from home remotely. All of our staff, secretaries are working from home remotely. Please continue to communicate with them. Our signs out in the marquee clearly says that our school buildings are closed, but education is not. And as adults, we need to make sure that continues. A couple other things I know that already set off the alarm this afternoon, which sort of surprised me, but I clearly have to make this statement, and the principals will communicate this too out. And as soon as it was announced that school was closed, we had a number of emails come to administration and voicemails, people wanting to come and get everything out of their lockers. Folks, that cannot happen. Our school buildings are closed. At a point in time in which we can open our school buildings, we will be glad to come up with a plan to make that happen. But at this point in time, for everyone's safety, we will not be opening our buildings for students to come and get their materials out of their lockers. That just will not happen. As far as how the fourth marking period will go, please allow us as administrators to continue to make those plans and communicate out over the website. I understand that you want answers, but you have to understand this too. You hear the same communication that we get. So I just want to emphasize and thank administration and staff again. At the same time that you heard the school buildings were closed today, that's when I heard. So give us the opportunity to come up with plans as we move forward. I do know the other big issue and concern of students that I hear from through email is prom and graduation. I will tell you that administration has talked, and we certainly want to provide some opportunity for prom. We know that things were purchased. We have already had some communication with the venue. We were having prom. Even if we are capable and able, we will definitely hold something in August. The same way with commencement, graduation. We will make sure that at some point, this graduating class will have the opportunity to walk across that stage. At some point, when school buildings are allowed to be open, we will make sure that happens. Those are two major things I know that students look forward to. And by all means, I don't want to have the first year where that opportunity isn't provided to you. Again, may look a little different, and it may not be the exact time that you want it to happen, but it is the administration's goal to make sure that those two activities happen in some shape or form. Also, I wanted to explain to you tonight, the board is going to vote on revising the school calendar. Please keep in mind that calendar is changing quite a bit from now to the end of the year. For those of you that are in the community, April 1st was logged as our first student day to return back to enrichment and review. Also on that calendar, we're placing only 2 holidays in the school calendar, which one of which is tomorrow, Good Friday. The other is Memorial Day on Monday, March 25th. May, sorry, you're correct. Thank you, Mr. Safran. Memorial Day on Monday, May 25th. Also, we are replacing May 8th with a student day, and on that day would be early dismissal. That was placed in there just simply because if we were able to come under the roof, and that was actually the scheduled prom day. So that will be a student day on the approved revised calendar this evening. So with that said, the last student day would end up being on June 4th, and the last teacher day would be June 5th for this school calendar year. Also on the agenda, I want to remind board members and everyone listening that we're asking you to approve the ICTC tentative 2021 general operating budget. That amount is $599 less for us this year than last year. So our total cost for the upcoming year at Penn's Manor will be $353,744. And just want to make sure, board, that you know that that shift in cost is actually a formula that is used across the districts in enrollment. It is not that we're cutting back on enrollment for ICTC, so I just wanted to make sure that you understood that. Also, we're asking you this evening to approve administration and Mr. Saffron the opportunity to renegotiate the current transportation agreement. We also have a couple of drivers to approve. We're also asking you to approve the renewal of Met's food contract, and that would be to not exceed more than $180,000 expense to the general operating budget. So again, I just want to say thank you to everyone's patience and support. I just have to go back through and say thank yous because of everything that's happened. Mr. Saffron, for the millions of questions that I've asked him for the board, for all the communication and emails that I have sent to you with numerous changes and your patience because things have changed so often. I appreciate that support. The administration, the number of online meetings that we've had, the number of times that you've come in when things needed to be done, to our teachers that had to completely learn a new way of starting to educate with almost the light switch taking place, going from your classroom to Google Classroom. So I appreciate all the support there. To all of our office staff that had to uproot and leave and go home and set up a remote office for your support and continuing to answer emails and also telephone calls. To our cafeteria workers who really are going out and with everyone, keeping our district connected, the tremendous job that they're doing. I mean, we're distributing the average now of 290 breakfast meals and lunch meals a day. So I have to say thank you to all of those folks. But most importantly, I have to thank our parents for your patience, for your extra hours that you are at home helping your students. And again, to students, I appreciate your patience and actually working with us to continue our educational process. So I know it's a trying time, but again, thanks to everyone for keeping us on the road of education. That is it, Mr. Saffron, or Mr. Packer.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Johnston. You know, on behalf of the board, we'd like to extend to all administration, staff, and everybody involved our appreciation for what you folks are doing. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Johnston.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions on any of the reports included in your packet? Any old business this evening? Okay, Mrs. Eckenrod, I don't believe we have any negotiation business.
Nothing tonight, Mr. Packer.
Okay, thank you. And Mrs. Williams, curriculum?
Yes, can I have a motion to revise the 2019-2020 school calendar as presented?
Can we have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Did I have Mrs. Tate on the motion
Yes.
and Mr. Larch on the second? Okay.
Are there any questions? Roll call?
Mr. Belchick,
Yes.
Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty,
Yes.
Mr. Larch,
Yes.
Mr. Packer,
Yes.
Mr. Kalenic,
Yes.
Mrs. Tate,
Yes.
Mrs. Williams.
Yes.
Okay, is that it for the curriculum this evening?
Yes, that's everything.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Williams. Okay, budget and finance, Mr. Belchick.
I have one item, Mr. Packer. Approve ICTC tentative 2020-2021 budget. I'd like to make the motion to approve the Indiana County Technology Center General Operating Budget for the fiscal year July 1, 2020 to June 30th, 2021 in the amount of $6,793,029, with Penns Manor Area School District share being $353,744 before any vocational education subsidy.
I'd like to second the motion.
Any questions or discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Belchick,
Yes.
Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
yes,
Mr. Hardesty,
Yes.
Mr. Larch,
yes,
Mr. Packer,
Yes.
Mr. Polenick,
Yes.
Mrs. Tate,
Yes.
Mrs. Williams,
Yes.
motion carries, Mr. Packer.
That's all I have, Mr. Packer.
Thank you, Mr. Belchick. Mr. Flynn, any buildings and grounds?
Nothing, Mr. Packer.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Flynn. Mr. Larch, Athletic Committee?
nothing at this time, Mr. Packer.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Larch. Mrs. Tate, Transportation.
Yes, I have two items tonight. A, addendum to transportation agreement. I would like to make the motion to authorize the administration and school solicitor as provided under the provisions of Act 13 of 2020 to renegotiate the district's contract with Tri-County Transportation, Inc., dated July 24th, 2008, for school bus transportation services to ensure contracted personnel and fixed costs, including administrative and equipment, are maintained during the period of school closure. Further, the Board of School Directors further authorizes the board president and the secretary to the board to sign a written addendum with Tri-County Transportation, Inc., setting forth the renegotiated terms. Further, the board authorizes that such signatures may also be obtained digitally or via facsimile.
Second.
I have a motion by Mrs. Tate and a second by Dr. Boston.
Questions? Roll call.
Mr. Belchick,
Yes.
Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
yes,
Mr. Hardesty,
Yes.
Mr. Larch,
Yes,
Mr. Packer,
Yes.
Mr. Polenick,
Yes.
Mrs. Tate,
Yes.
Mrs. Williams.
Yes.
Motion carries, Mr. Packer.
Okay, I have one more item. B, approve additional drivers for the 2019-2020 school year. I would like to make the motion to approve the following as additional drivers for Tri-County during the 2019-2020 school year. Julie Grove, Amelia Seaton, Carl Stahl.
Second.
I have a motion by Mrs. Tate, a second by Dr. Boston.
Any questions or discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Belchick,
Yes.
Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
yes,
Mr. Hardesty,
Yes.
Mr. Larch,
yes,
Mr. Packer,
Yes.
Mr. Polenick,
Yes.
Mrs. Tate,
Yes,
Mrs. Williams.
Yes.
Motion carries, Mr. Packer.
that's all I have, Mr. Packer.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Tate. Any policies, correspondence? Okay, under new business, Mets Food Service contract renewal, Can we have a motion to enter into a one-year contract, first year renewal with Met's Culinary Management for supervision and operation of a food service program for the Manor area school district effective July 1, 2020, and ending June 30, 2021, at a guaranteed expense to the general fund not to exceed $180,000.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
A motion by Mrs. Tate and a second by Mr. Larch.
Is there any discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Belchick,
Yes.
Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty,
Yes.
Mr. Larch,
Yes.
Mr. Packer,
Yes.
Mr. Plenick,
Yes.
Mrs. Tate,
Yes.
Mrs. Williams.
Yes.
Motion carries, Mr. Packer.
Okay, also under new business 21B, can we have a motion to approve the 2019 superintendent evaluation of Mr. Darren Johnston with an overall proficient rating of the performance standards for the 2019 calendar year? The school board of directors, as per the Pennsylvania School Code, will publish a statement on the district's website.
I'd like
I'll
to
make
make
the-
the motion.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Mr. Hardesty and a second by Mrs. Eckenrode.
Questions?
Mr. Packer, if I could, I'd like to point out a couple of things as chairman of the committee that took care of this, which includes Dr. Boston and you, Mr. Packer. The state allows or requires us to declare our superintendent on a yearly basis, either proficient or non-proficient. We do that by each board member in getting a survey in December of each year to evaluate our superintendent in various areas of his job, which includes the education of children, the running of the school district, public outreach, etc. We have 4 or 5 categories. We have 1 is unsatisfactory, 2 needs improvement, 3 is satisfactory, 4 is very competent, and 5 is outstanding. For the 3rd year, Mr. Johnston, and for 2019, has received a 4.51 rating, which puts him over very competent and just short of outstanding. So an A minus maybe, Mr. Johnston, I'm not sure. And of course, the board members have the opportunity to put notes in and other thoughts for Mr. Johnson, and that has taken place. And it's once again been a pleasure for the committee to work with the board, and especially you, Mr. Johnston, to put you in at 4.1%, very competent. And we look forward to working with you again. Thank you, Mr. Packer.
Thank you, Mr. Hardesty.
Thank you, Mr. Hardesty. Thank you to the board.
Okay, student recognition, PMEA Student of the Month for April.
Mr. Packer, just a moment. We need to take a vote.
I'm sorry. Darren, you should have corrected me there. Okay. Did we get a motion?
We do. We have a motion by Mr. Hardesty and a second by Mrs. Eckenrode.
Okay, roll call.
Can't hear you, Josh.
Roll call, Josh.
Sorry about that. Mr. Belchick,
Yes.
Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty,
Yes.
Mr. Larch,
Yes.
Mr. Packer,
Yes.
Mr. Planick,
Yes.
Mrs. Tate,
Yes.
Mrs. Williams.
Yes.
That is all, and the motion passes, Mr. Packer.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now under student recognition, PMEA Student of the Month for April is Justice Rute. 2020 Indiana Gazette NIE contest winners, Gwen Stahl, 11th grader, first place for writing contest for the best opinion column, and Luke Rainey, 10th grader, second place for writing contest for the best opinion column. So our congratulations to all of these students for their performance. Okay, before I adjourn tonight's meeting, Mr. Mostello, is there any questions that we have?
1 second, Mr. Packer. I see none, Mr. Packer.
Pardon me.
There are no additional comments.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you, Josh. How about from the board? Any questions or comments from Mr. Johnson's report? Okay, thank you, folks. Our next committee meeting is May 7th at 7 o'clock, and the next board meeting is May 14th at 7 o'clock. And who knows, hopefully, maybe it will be, where is it, Mr. On here?
It won't be here. It'll probably be similar to what you're experiencing right now.
All right, we'll get used to this.
Right.
Okay. Okay, is there any other business that needs brought before the board this evening? Okay, hearing none, this meeting is adjourned. Stay safe and healthy, folks.
Thank you.
Good night.
Yes, good night.
Thank you, Josh and Dave Grambling, for making this as easy as possible. If I can do it,
Yes.
most anybody can.
Thank you very
Yes,
much.
all
Good
the
night,
credit,
everybody.
all the credit to Dave. He's the one monitoring, so.
We did vote on the transportation thing.
Yes.
Oh, it was included with her. I was looking on the old, look at, what do you think of me, Josh? I got 3 items here, huh? Laptop and a PC, and that's what screwed me up.
You have a backup to your backup to your backup.
Yes. All right.
Okay.
Oh, there is a Mrs. Zeglin still. I hadn't seen that. We done? What do we?
We are. Everybody can leave if they'd like. Dave, you can kick everybody. There you go.